Hello, everyone. It's our pleasure to have Dr. Brovkin in our show. Dr. Brovkin, welcome.
Thank you.
We will be
That-
talking about different geopolitical issues concern everybody. Last few weeks have been very intense. The U.S. elections, people all around the world very anxiously watching the developments. And Trump's re-election really, emerging a lot of questions. What will be the relations with Europe? What will be the future of Russia-Ukraine war? How, Trump will handle this Israel war on Gaza? So, what are your thoughts on the Trump's re-election, Dr. Brovkin, please?
Yes, well, fascinating topic. Of course, there are thousands and thousands of comments, and these basically, from my perspective, concern two things. One is American politics and what it means for America, but being a historian of Russia, the second question, what does it mean for Russia, for Russian-American relations, and especially for the war in Ukraine? And of course, intermediary question connected to this one is Europe. What's going to happen to NATO, and what's going to happen to U.S. Economic and political relations with Europe? All of these are things are going to change. Now the question is which way, and that's what everybody's thinking about and producing all kinds of explanations and hopes, theories, and so on. My theory is like this, very briefly. What a lot depends in specifics who surrounds Trump and who he's listening to.
Mm-hmm.
So because he does tend to change his opinions and be influenced by some people, and sometimes he then regrets what he's done. So a lot depends on what kind of people. But if we go by what he said himself and a kind of people that I see around him now at this moment, Elon Musk and Vice President-elect Vance and Tulsi Gabbard and a few other people, one would have an impression that his policies, domestic policies, would be reindustrialization of America and bringing back business to America and trying to restore what he believes needed to compete with China. That's one part which we can discuss separately if it's going to work and what are the difficulties and so on. There are all kinds of theories about that. But as far as foreign policy, the biggest question, of course, is what is going to happen to the war in Ukraine. We all know he promised to stop the war
Yes.
in 24 hours. Now, those of us who believe that this war was provoked by NATO and that it is in the interest of Ukrainian people to stop it as soon as possible and to finish off Zelensky's regime and find a meaningful compromise, that's possible within 24 hours. A telephone call to Putin, we agree to your points. Ukraine is not going to be in NATO, and
Mm-hmm.
let's discuss substantive matters on the border, on the security, on human rights, on the rights of minorities, Russian language, religion, etc. Now, all that could be done, and I showed it in my previous video. This is a real possibility for March 2025. However,
Mm-hmm.
however, that may not happen. Because if Trump agrees to these fundamental non-negotiable issues for Russia, then he would be immediately accused that he's a Russian spy or Putin's man or whatever, as he has been for years and years. Then immediately people would say, you cannot betray poor Ukraine. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot just waste all these billions that were spent into nothing. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. In other words, the deep state or the neocons are going to try to control Trump, to slow down Trump, to
Mm-hmm.
prevent Trump from doing what he promised to do, or simply to just redirect his
Mm-hmm.
efforts. For example, if he appoints Pompeo to any position, that means there's not going to be any change whatsoever. It's going to be the
Absolutely.
same course as with Biden.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the problem. He's got really difficult issues to deal with, but we shall see. I still am relatively optimistic that he might be able to do that. Now, obviously, Russia is my concern because I am a historian of Russia. But
Mhm.
if we want to look at the big picture, I think a much, much more serious problem is the Middle East and Israeli-Palestinian, much more serious and much more dangerous and much more difficult. In other words, if an optimistic scenario, you could call and say, Zelensky, look, you either sign or we don't give you anything, that's it. And Ukraine has nothing to do, nowhere to go, that's it. They basically have to do what they're told to by
Mhm.
their sponsors, which means by the United States. With Israel is more difficult. Theoretically, one could call Netanyahu and said, look, if you don't stop killing people, we're not going to give you any money and any weapons. But the problem with that is that they may lose. And if they lose, they may actually, this Israel may be destroyed. It could be a very risky thing to do. So he has to support Israel just because the very survival of Israel is at stake. Now, the Israelis themselves got themselves into this situation. So it's not Trump's fault. But I'm just saying how difficult it will be to resolve this issue without, major dangers, both for the United States in the Middle East and for Israeli survival.
Yeah, you're right. As soon as Trump will take office, there will be, very difficult issues at hand for him. Now let's move to the Europe, which is already, facing a lot of, pressure on different countries, economically, inflation, unemployment, and migration issues. And many countries have, now, showed the concern that Trump's re-election can actually, really facilitate the popular nationalists and conservative in European countries. What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yes, this is true. The trends in Europe have been going in this direction anyway. And of course, the neocons or neoliberals or von der Leyen types in Europe are very worried. Now, let's start with this.
Mhm.
My understanding and my reading of Trump about Europe is that he does not like the loafers. He doesn't like people sitting on America's back. He
Mhm.
wants a good deal. And he really believes that if the Europeans are so smart and so rich and so powerful, then they should defend themselves. Why should the United States defend them for free? I think that's his logic. In other
Mhm.
words, this is why he was saying you guys have to contribute, and if you not contribute, you're fired. Now, could they contribute? They could. And now they're beginning to say to save NATO, they're probably willing to raise their payments up to 2%. The problem is they don't have any money, that their economies are in trouble. And the reason they are in trouble is because the sanctions that they imposed on Russia hurt them more than they hurt Russia. They hurt Russia too, but Russia has China and has India and has other countries that can sell its oil to. But the European economies are struggling to survive with this double competition from Europe and from the United States and China. They do need Russian cheap gas, especially the German economy. So you have in German economy a crisis. The government collapsed over the war in Ukraine, over the funding of the war, over the policy to Russia. In France, there is 10 billion hole in the budget, and Macron is the most unpopular president. And he's certainly not in the position to send any money or any troops or anything at all to Russia. And he's going to lose the next election, that's for sure. So that's the kind of situation in Europe. The engine of European Union was German economy. And if it is now stalling, what are they going to do? I
Yes.
mean, Europe is in a very, very bad shape. And they're
Mhm.
not ready to make conclusions, except what's going to happen in Germany? There will be big gains for Alternative for Germany and for probably Sarah Landknecht party. So these are the opposition parties who want to restore normal relations with Russia, who want to have cheap gas and cheap oil restored, who don't want to continue war in Ukraine. Their voices are higher and louder, but they probably will not win the elections.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how much they win on a nationwide basis it's not clear. Maybe 20%, maybe 25, maybe more than Social Democrats. But what is likely to happen is the Christian Democrats are go forward with Ukrainian war just as Scholz was. So they have no solution to finish it, and they're like more Atlanticists than Trump.
Yes.
So so that means that there's no resolution in Germany, and German economy is not going to get any better anytime soon. So that means that Europe faces a very, very dim future.
Mm-hmm.
Either they have to have really new political forces come to power, which would be kind of nationalist forces, politically speaking, alternative for Germany,
Mm-hmm.
Front Populaire in France, Orban type people who would want to restore normal relations with Russia and with the United States.
So now,
Is that possible? Yes, it is
mhm.
possible.
Okay.
Is it likely? Sometime in the future, but not immediately,
Okay.
which means there will be trouble ahead for Europe.
Yeah. You see, this three-party coalition is in Germany has collapsed, and it further, there is a political chaos, and German economy has been shrinking from the last 2 years, and
Yes.
from the world's third biggest economy, shrinking in such a pace. How the other European countries are worried about such kind of economical meltdown?
Well, it's something that is a taboo topic because everybody knows
Hmm.
that the engine of European Union is Germany. But the French don't like to talk about it because the French would like to be that themselves, but they
Okay.
realize that it is the Germans. The British are no longer European Union, and they have no say in these matters. Spain is in a difficult situation now too, although its economy is doing fairly well. But they have two big issues. They have the Catalonia independence movement, which
Hmm.
is very, which makes them focus on themselves. And they've never been in the position of a leader of the European Union. They never even claimed, they never thought of themselves. So they're not original founders. Italy is also in very bad shape, and the Italian government, right-wing Italian government, seems to be okay, but they're not resolving any issues. And it seems to be that they're completely under the thumb of European Union and von der Leyen. So Europe, in other words, the Italians could go a different direction if there was some leader who would show them the way, but they're not doing it on their own. They're trying to sit on the fence and support Ukraine, but at the same time support peace efforts. I mean, they haven't decided what to do. Economically, they are okay, but again, they have serious problem with population shrinkage, with the old age population growing, young people diminishing, illegal migration, all similar issues to many other European countries, which need to be addressed at some way or another. But the biggest issue in Europe, they have not yet produced a program to resolve their issues, other than saying they're good Atlanticists and they want NATO, they want the partnership with the United States. Whereas my understanding is this era has gone.
Okay.
Europe is not going to get technology from the United States. Technology is now coming from the East. The Chinese cars are cheaper and better, and the Germans, they have a shock. I mean,
Hmm.
they can't live with this. They grew up with the understanding and the pride that German cars are the best in the world. That's it. It's a mantra. German cars are the best in the world. And then it turns out, bang, the Chinese, out of nothing, out of 30 years ago, there was nothing. They produce cars, electric cars that are cheaper and better. And it's a new age. Nobody needs these engines that the Germans were so good at. So the new age is coming, new technology is coming, and it's like they don't know what to do. They don't know how to react.
Okay.
Now, eventually, trade and cooperation may work out somehow for both parties to find their niche It's not an irresolvable issue. But at this moment, it looks like China can offer to Europe more than the United States
Okay.
in terms of trade, in terms of technology, and this begins to be seen in numbers, in numbers of trade, in the kind of machinery that is being bought. I mean, all kinds of things are coming to Europe from China, as they actually do to the United States.
So you see, the Ukraine conflict is there is no way out so far, and things are, very complicated. And we see some kind of push in Moldova. So how you relate this issue with the geopolitical, status?
Yes, Moldova, I think, is an indicator of the trends we're talking about. And the
Mm-hmm.
trends are that the Western European Union and the Western model is becoming less attractive. If
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, everybody in Eastern Europe wanted to be in EU and wanted to be in NATO and wanted to be under the umbrella of the United States, now this is like a historical change.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is an alternative. Now they are kind of feel, well, maybe we can do BRICS. Maybe we will do better with just not rushing under the thumb of the Europeans. Maybe we could find our way. This, of course, is very clearly seen in Turkey, which spent 30 years trying to get into EU, and now they're not interested and they're looking eastwards. Uh, I think the results of elections in Moldova show very clearly the majority of people voted against joining in EU, but then
Mm-hmm.
they pushed it through by counting the diaspora vote. Now, what diaspora vote? I mean, these people are probably citizens of France or Germany or America. Yeah,
Yes.
they have Moldovan passports, but that's not the people who live in Moldova. And those that do live, over 50%, slightly over. It's like half and half, but at least the majority of people who live in Moldova voted against joining the European Union and against their president who wants to join Romania. Only through the votes of the diaspora that she stayed in power, which actually means that something new is happening. The second factor, which would influence Moldova tremendously, is what happens in Ukraine. If
Mm-hmm.
the Russian army takes Odessa and comes to the borders of Moldova, that would be a very different situation.
Mm-hmm.
Moldova would really have to decide what kind of relationship it's going to have with Russia. I don't think Russians are going to overrun Moldova. No, I don't think Putin is into that. There will be a choice, a real choice, what kind of economic relations you have. Now, that may not happen. Putin may not go to Odessa. We don't know. This is completely open. But whichever end of the conflict in Ukraine will be, it will influence the kind of political situation that Moldova finds itself with and what it would do next. It's too early to predict, but the trends are there.
So, Dr. Brovkin, do you believe that relationship between Russia and United States and Russia and Europe will improve in coming days when President Trump take office?
It's very hard to say.
Yeah.
Everybody hopes that they will be. And Putin in the Valdai conference he stretched out the hand and he congratulated Trump. And he obviously is in the mood to do that. However,
Mm-hmm.
let's not forget what a dangerous world. If tomorrow Netanyahu orders to attack Iran, which he can do, and Iran will respond in kind. And then the United States would attack Iran in support of Israel. And Russia is already sending its S-500s, the most
Mm-hmm.
sophisticated anti-aircraft missiles, to Iran. We can find ourselves in a near war situation through these proxies. So this is extremely dangerous. I think most dangerous is the unpredictability of the situation in the Middle East that can just explode without anybody having any control over the issue.
Yes, you're right, Dr. Brovkin. We are entering truly, a pivotal period of geopolitics. in our lifetime. While the future, directions are remain unclear, but we can predict that this coming presidency of Trump will be really unpredictable. And what are your final thoughts on it?
Well, my final thoughts are that, of course, what people do can change the situation, but the fundamentals are still there. Let me just speculate that if these catastrophic scenarios do realize, and if there is a war, let's say Israel attacks Iran,
Mm-hmm.
the fundamental fact is they can't win. They will hurt themselves because they cannot win against a country of 100 million people, a country that has military support of Russia and China, a country that has supersonic missiles. They can't. In order to win, there's no way. Even the United States Army can overrun Iran. They can kill a lot of people, but they cannot win over them. So that means this is a total folly to go into war. Israel needs to negotiate and settlement. But they're not in the mood of doing this, which means that the Israeli government is the worst enemy of the Israeli people and of the state of Israel, because they're pushing and pushing it to the brink, and they may lose. And if they lose, if Russia loses, Russia will continue to exist.
Mm-hmm.
If Ukraine loses, if they're lucky, they may still continue to exist. If Israel loses, it may not exist. And this is why they're doing an extremely dangerous for themselves game. That's the bottom line.
Okay, thank you for bringing, these crucial explanations. Just a very quickly, a small question. Do you see the future of Zelensky is now short?
Oh, Zelensky is a dead man walking. As soon as there is any kind of agreement, he will have to resign. His term is over, and
Mhm.
nobody's going to elect him for anything. People are already, I'm following the Ukrainian politics, are already juggling for the position of influence to compete in the presidential elections when it's all over. So Zelensky is done. Is basically, he has no future whatsoever, because with any settlement, he's not going to be there. That's it.
That's it. Okay. Dr. Bravkin, we appreciate your time and kindness for talking to us. We will continue talking about these crucial issues of geopolitics in future. Till then, bye now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.